Welcome back to Partnerships Unraveled, the weekly podcast where we dive deep into channel and partnerships. My name is Rick van der Bos. I'm CEO and founder at Channext and co-host of the Partnerships Unraveled podcast. And I am here together with my co-host and VP Partners of Channext, Alex Whitford.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Alex, how are you doing today?
Yeah, really good. Excited to be back on the podcast.
Yeah, me as well. Last week we recorded the first one, so let's dive into the second one, I think. Alex, last time, what I thought was particularly an interesting topic is like, how do you stand out of the crowd towards your partners as a vendor, and we dove in pretty deep. And I think maybe it's interesting to briefly summarize where we were at before we dive into the topic of today.
Yeah, 100%. So, when I've done mass partner recruitment and enablement activities all across EMEA, there's sort of three consistent questions that you always have to answer to generate a successful channel. And partners care about three things. Who am I targeting as an end user? How easy is it to sell? And how much money can I make? And I think if you answer those three questions very, very well, you're almost guaranteed to have a successful partner recruitment, enablement, and channel strategy. But what I think is really interesting about that proposition in an ever-increasing competitive market, who am I targeting as an end user, and how much money am I going to make, sometimes are pretty consistent across brands and across strategies and across markets. And so the key differentiating factor and where channel organizations need to focus is how easy is it to sell. So I think today will be a really useful topic to explore is how do you remove that friction? How do you make that easy process even easier continuously? Because if you're targeting the same end users with similar products and you're making similar commercials, ease of sale is going to be the differentiating factor. And we know that vendors that do that well win big. Microsoft, AWS, they spend millions and millions a year focusing on smoothing out the sales, marketing, operational, technical process to streamline that capability. They don't do that for fun. They do that because they know ease of sale is critical. And in fact, partners will choose very often to make less money if it's easy. If it's a high revenue but low margin product, that's not too bad. But for your high margin products that are very complicated, you turn off a lot of your partner base if you can't really simplify that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think indeed, I think we also spoke about it last week, but it's not necessarily that partners really want an easy product to sell, but everything around it, like working together with you as a vendor and helping the end user to eventually implement it and sell to the end user, that's where they really want the support. And that's the process you need to really make easier and easier all time over time.
100%. I think if you go and speak to any partner and say, do you want free money? They're going to say yes, right? So let's try and get the sales and marketing approach as close to free money as possible, right? And if it's particularly onerous or if there's a lot of risk involved, you're going to minimize your success rate. Whereas if you can tighten up that funnel as tight as possible, have as minimal failure rates, and complexity is failure rate, right? At some point, partners are going to lose interest. At some point, partners are going to be distracted by an easier deal. And so simplicity of sale, simplicity of procurement, simple operational process, all of those things are critical. And yet a lot of the focus is, well, my partner and I have a great relationship. I'm sure you do. That's great. But your partner probably has a great relationship with quite a few vendors, sometimes directly competitive vendors. And what you don't want it to get down to is, oh, well, this sales rep took me out for beers last week, so the deal's going to go one way or another. No, what we want to do is guarantee success at a macro level, take individual sales nous out of the equation, and instead build a channel structure and channel strategy by removing friction that ultimately guarantees success over a long time.
Yeah, I think this was an excellent introduction to the topic of today, removing the friction throughout the entire partner journey. So I think we're going to touch on 5 of the key areas in the partner journey. It's partner recruitment, it's onboarding, it's training the partners, it's marketing, and it's sales. And I think that's the topics we'll be covering today, where we'll be removing the friction. And I would say let's start at the start, which is the recruitment. Like you have this huge amount of partners that are available throughout the world in this case, and then first you need to think, okay, who do I want to target? But where would you start, like in terms of recruitment, when you look at removing the friction?
Sure, and I think
maybe what have you seen? Also nice to share with the audience is what examples have you seen where things are not working properly?
Yeah, so I think what's really funny, and certainly I've been guilty of this as a salesperson, but I challenge any channel leader to tell me that this isn't true. very often channel recruitment is done in reverse. So a partner stumbles across a deal and then says, I'm interested in selling this product because, hey, we all love free money, right? So if there's a deal on the table, they're going to go after it. And then those are the partners that are recruited. Whereas to me, that's insane. You want to approach it the other way around. Who are the top partners that you want to work with? Break that down by segment, by vertical, by specialization, and then map into each territory who are the key partners. And a word of warning to all vendors out there. There are some very, very successful partners. And having worked very closely with vendors all over the globe, I hear the same 15 to 25 names as, they're our most important partner. And I go, okay, but they're their most important partner for 500 different vendors. And because that relationship is one way, sometimes people misprioritize where to put the value stack, right? So to understand when you break down your market segmentation, who are the right types of partners in each territory? Do they target our end user demographic? Do they have the right relationships? Proactively build that list and then take your message to market and make sure you're answering the three critical pieces. Which end users are you targeting? How easy is it to sell? And how much money are you going to make? If you get those three right, partner recruitment, absolute breeze.
Yeah, and I think you could even like put that in a framework where you work with an ideal partner profile, that as soon as you get more insights indeed into what type of partners are working best, I think that's why it's important to have a lot of data about it as well, like who are generating most revenue, who can help my end users in the best way, etc. And start putting that into profiles more and more. So what type of partner do I want? Do I want resellers, MSPs, system integrators, etc.? What type of end users, what type of verticals do I want them to focus on? So education, healthcare, retail, etc. And from there on, you can get to multiple ideal partner profiles. And that's what you can have your team focus on as well, like the partner development reps who can go proactively to those type of partners instead of waiting indeed for partners to come to you. And because indeed that's what you started, of course, with it. I see that a lot as well. Like there's an end user who asks for a specific type of product to the partner, and then they're like, hey, we're not a partner of that vendor yet. And then the journey starts from there. And of course, that's what you always want to be, because that's like a natural way of growing your channel and your partners as well. But it's really important to always stay very proactive in that case and focus on getting the right type of partners on board.
Absolutely. It's the difference between passive recruitment and active recruitment. Passive recruitment is fantastic, and it's a benchmark that your end user demand gen is working. If you're getting lots of passive development, your marketing spend at an end user level is probably being well spent. So congratulations. However, your active recruitment, that's strategic recruitment. Who do I need to cover? And most importantly, understand your deal mechanism. Is it facilitation? Is it value add? That's going to massively differentiate the types of partners that you want. And the honest answer is a balance, right? Don't go and just recruit facilitation partners and then wonder why, oh, hang on, our end user demand gen isn't very good and we're not generating any value. Okay, well, that's a problem. So then you need some value add partners who are going to be very proactive and very strategic in terms of forcing demand down the channel. But that requires support, both from a removing friction perspective and a commercials perspective. If you're going to ask partners to put in that extra legwork against a competing vendor, well, guess what? They're going to want to make more money, or you're going to have to make it very, very easy. And sometimes the margin potential isn't there, right? Sometimes you can't discount your product anymore. Maybe you're at your limit. And so then the investment has to be different, and the investment has to be in removing friction. So once you've structured your channel in a way that you're confident that you've got the right type of partners in a list and you're taking that message to market, then it comes about optimizing and re-optimizing your friction removal strategy.
Yeah, and what I also really think is that the proactive partner recruitment will really benefit your passive partner recruitment, because what I see all the time is that all partners are looking at each other as well, and especially the ones who are focusing on the right type of on the same type of end users, because they are in the same deals, they are in the same they are in the same conversations with them. So if you go more proactive on the right type of partners, also the other way around, the partners around them, the partners you want, like based on your new ideal partner profile, will come back to you because they are getting asked about your product, or they see other partners becoming a partner of you, etc. So I think it will really bring the best to both sides.
100%. We always used to call it the Coke-Pepsi strategy. Once you close Coke, closing Pepsi is really easy, because you go, hey, guess what the guys down the road just bought? And so what you want to do is enter the market in that aggressive way, win one landmark partner, and then go down the road to all their competitors and say, hey, did you know X partner is now selling our product because of the value that we're bringing to them? That's great. And then you're able to cannibalize that strategy, cannibalize that content, cannibalize that messaging through the other types of partners. Beware of saturation, because what you don't want to happen is you oversaturate your market in a particular vertical or a particular partner type, and then suddenly, all the partners are turning off because really they're not seeing enough value in your product. So keep it strategic, but yeah, the Coke Pepsi model always works.
Yeah, that last thing you say is indeed super important, because if you have too many of the same type of partners and there's not enough revenue or not enough customers to work on, they will doze off eventually, because that's the balance is very important there.
And twofold, not just that, it's also that if you don't have the right sales management on those partners, if your channel account managers are spread too thin, I'm always a big believer. It's better to win with 3 partners than try with 10 and ultimately fail with all of them. So keep it strategic, keep it proactive, and keep it designed.
Yeah, 100% agree with this one. And then I think on the partner side, what can you do as a vendor to make the recruitment experience better for them or easier?
Yeah, sure. So again, proactively design that process, right? So often I see vendors go, right, CAMs, over to you, go and recruit. And it's like, well, hang on, what messaging are we really taking to them? Who are the end users we're going to target? And we know very clearly the data is clear. If they don't generate 3 to 5 opportunities within the first 3 months, they're at significantly higher risk of churning out. So it's not just recruitment. Recruitment's really easy. You can get someone to sign a contract with no commitment pretty quickly. It's flowing onto onboarding and enablement. That's the challenging bit, because that's when the removing friction comes in. How are you going to help them close their first deal? How much money they're going to make? What's the business plan looking like over the first 12, 24 months? Are you important to their value stack and their growth over a long-term period? If your CAMs aren't asking those questions proactively, frankly, you're going to fail, maybe not in the short term, but in the medium term for sure, because it needs to be designed to recruit a limited amount of partners, but really deliver value to those partners, so that ultimately we're going to win together. And that's the beauty of the channel, right? We're designing a process where we win together, and that takes active design and active management.
So if you would look at it from like a sales perspective, you would qualify the partners much stronger at the beginning and really show them the value of working with you together and really get them bought in, because that will really benefit in the rest of the partnership.
Yeah, exactly. And things like, having a partner portal that's well designed is always an interesting one, because you need the content made available, right? So how am I going to market to my end users? What's my price list? What's my strategy? What's my deck? Do the CAMs have access to all of that? Do they really understand that flow? Has someone taken them through a recruitment and onboarding flow, level by level, detail by detail? How do you integrate sales, marketing, technical, operations into that whole process? If you haven't thought of that by design, it's so easy to get sales on board because they're going, oh my God, how much money am I going to make? This is fantastic. But then the marketing team are thinking, I don't have any collateral. How do you think I'm going to generate demand? Or the operational team have no idea what the pricing is and haven't had the part codes to upload into their CRM. Having that full process built is critical to really ensuring that the failure rate is minimized. And to me, that's what removing friction is. I think as sales leaders, it's really easy to design a sales strategy. But that's one part of a 4-piece puzzle, which is sales, marketing, technical, and operations, right? If you don't have all of those pieces clearly defined, how to recruit a partner, how to onboard a partner, and how to make that partner successful in end users, ultimately one of those pieces will let you down. It might not guarantee that you fail, but it will minimize success.
I think another topic we touched upon last week as well was being extremely transparent. Like I've also and I think that especially is at the recruitment phase, because of course, once you are through the recruitment phase, then when partners get access indeed to the portal, they get access to a lot of documents and materials, etc. But all of that is like kind of hidden behind the walls until they've signed that partner agreement. And I think that's another thing really to remove the friction in your partner recruitment process. The more information you can get upfront to the partner as well. So on your partner recruitment page as well, where you can share a lot more of like the details and how you work together, what you actually provide to this partner. That's also really an important step of removing the friction, I think, to really get partners on board in the best way.
Yeah, you never want to hear the 2 words, now what, right? You want people to understand, ideally in some sort of Gantt chart plan flow through time, that they understand what they're trying to do. And I hate seeing partners go, okay, now what? Okay, we've done this, you've trained my sales team, now what? Oh, well, over to you, partner. Now you've got to go and independently just create demand for us. Well, where's my marketing collateral? What's my MDF plan look like? How are you going to take me through that journey? And if that was the expectation going in, that they're going to independently generate demand, that's fine, but they need to know up front. Otherwise, it's a waste of everyone's time. I'd much rather qualify out a partner right at the beginning within the first meeting to say, you guys need to generate demand for us. We're not going to help you with it. And some partners will say that's fine. If the opportunity is there, they'll say, yep, we're willing to put the legwork in. Some won't. But qualify that out early so that you can then spend the time and the resource and the focus on the partners who want to come on that journey with you. And sometimes there is a game of smoke and mirrors, right, where you go, cool, we'll get them really, really excited, and then hopefully they'll take the bitter pill to swallow further down the line. And that's just a horrendous way of going to market. And what we should actually be doing is focusing on generating clarity at the beginning, generating a plan, and executing clearly.
So dare to ask the difficult questions.
Ask for the no, right? I think it's basic sales. Ask for the no. Find a reason why a partner shouldn't work with you, because once you filter all of that out, you're left with the ones that really do want to work with you, and they're the ones that deserve your time and support.
Yeah, fully agree. Yeah, absolutely love this. I think we can kind of round up the recruitment part, because then you work towards, like, you qualified the partner very well. You are very clear on what type of partners you want to work with and to what type of partners you can give the most value. And then they sign the contract. And then we get into the onboarding phase. And I know that you are like a big believer in very strong plans, make like business plans together with your partners as well. Maybe can we dive a little bit deeper into that topic? Like, what, as soon as the signature is there on the partner contract, what's next?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, a business plan for a partner needs to be broken down into 4 categories. So sales, marketing, technical, and operations. So we'll work back up the value stack. So in terms of operations, pretty simple. Do they have everything they need to be able to close the deal? Contracts, if you're working via distribution, probably they're handling a lot of this on your behalf. Are they signed up to the partner portal? Do they have the price list? Have they done a dummy deal through their systems to see, okay, everything works? Because you hate to see it come end of quarter, salesperson's counting on a deal. Oh, operationally it doesn't work. Someone hasn't signed something yet, and then it falls over. So better to get the dirty work done first. Make sure it all works. Technical. What technical support is required pre-sales, post-sales for this product? Does the partner need to do that? Is it offset to the distributor, offset to the vendor? Who is doing that, and is that clearly defined in some sort of SLA document? You know, from a technical perspective, pre-sales and post-sales support people love to understand who is responsible at the end of the day if this doesn't work. And having that clarity is such a strong influence into the sales team. I've seen it happen time and time again where pre or post-sales aren't particularly happy with a vendor. Magically, SLAs start falling out of place. It starts not working as positively. And that influences the salespeople to think, actually, I'm not going to push water uphill. This is too complicated. So getting the technical team brought in. Marketing. Are we marketing to end users? What collateral do we need? What are the goals? What are the objectives? What time frames do we need to achieve those goals in? Outbound email campaign, via social, what does that look like? Having a defined marketing strategy is critical. And then sales, which I think for a lot of the channel is actually the easy bit. What are the relationships I'm building? Who are the key end users that the partner currently speaks to, that we work with, that we want to work with? Let's define that. Let's build a low-hanging fruit plan and then work our way up the tree to get to the more complicated stuff. That stuff is pretty easily defined. But to me, having a business plan encompasses all of that. And I say this to channel leaders regularly. Stop focusing just on sales, because you're failing at marketing, technical, and operations, and that's the reason you're minimizing your success.
Yeah, so if you don't have the other things in place, the sales will never start happening.
Yeah, or they will, but they're just limited, right? You know, I've seen it so often where, and this is why, you know, CSMs, sometimes they can be the holy grail of sort of partner relationships. I've seen it where, CAMs think they're doing a great job, and then a CSM comes in and really evaluates the partner landscape and says, hang on, we're missing these 2 or 3 key parts of the business plan. Sales triple overnight. Fantastic. That's what we need, because you want everyone fully aligned to your strategy. Let's take a good example. Partner speaking to HSBC. Great. You've got your technical pre-sales guy from the partner in there talking about a particular technology stack. Fantastic. If that technical guy is bought in to another supplementary, complementary vendor technology, they're more likely to position that. That is proper sales influence through the channel. That's why we use the channel, because people have these really strong relationships. But if you don't have sales, marketing, technical, and ops all bought into that flow, you're missing opportunities to really organically land and expand.
Yeah, and I'm curious to learn what in your mind falls under operations. Is that things like procurement, etc.?
Yeah.
Could you give some examples?
Yeah, procurement flow, legal, contracts, anything there that's really going to stop you closing a deal. Legal is the absolute classic one that I see so often, especially when you're dealing with your US vendors out there. Beware. The UK, not the same as Europe, doesn't have the same tax, doesn't have the same legal framework. And so having all of those master services agreements, we see this in SaaS consistently, in place and agreed to, that's what prevents deal slippage, because time and time again, we've been stung by this. You get to end of quarter, sales has committed a deal. Head of legal's getting a call at 2 a.m. We need a contract signed now, because if those contracts aren't in place, that's deal prevention. You know, that's what's going to stop you hitting your targets, and that's what's going to cause pain to the partner, because it's not just the vendor that's annoyed. The salesperson in the partner has committed that deal, and guess what? They're never blaming themselves, right? They are going to say the vendor's messed up. And what does that do? It sows bad seeds destroys your reputation within the partner. We had a critical deal that was meant to come in, 31st of January or whenever, and it slipped because the vendor didn't do what they needed to do. They didn't set us up operationally, and that is what's going to poison the well and stop partners committing deals for you at the end of quarter, which is what we all want to do, right? Those are the deals that we have to close.
Yeah, so in terms of timeline, you would say like literally the operations part is what you start with day one. As soon as it's like you make sure that everything is in place. Of course, you also want to start with sales and marketing and technical also almost on day one, but like it must be a parallel process and not...
Depending on your resources that you have available to you. Some of that will just be managed by the distributor or whatever, and then that's easier. But some of that needs to be managed in parallel, and hopefully you've got people in the operations team, people in the technical team, people in the marketing team to help support a CAM be successful. But, you know, I always talk about internally, we talk about a lot the difference between accountability and responsibility. The CAM is responsible for making sure it happens, and they will hold people within the partner, people within their own legal teams accountable to making sure that success happens. But the CAM has to understand that they own sales, marketing, technical, and operations, because they own the partner. Now, they have to pull other people in, but they need to make sure that they are bulletproof from front to back.
Yeah, so there's like a partner onboarding process and flow created, and preferably you have that in a platform or in a portal where you just can follow step by step together with your partner. I think that's really important. That it's not just the vendor who has insight into where are we at right now, but also the partner, like how far are we completed in setting up this partnership and getting it off the ground.
100%. The highest functioning channel people I've ever worked with, they've learned to love sales, marketing, technical, and operations, because they're all a critical piece to making it work. You know, I see very talented salespeople top out at sort of mid-level because they're brilliant relationship builders, but they haven't got the eye for detail, or sometimes they just aren't willing to swallow the pill and really dig into the detail of where is this legal contract? How likely is this to slow me down? And making sure that we are very, very clear from the outset. It is CAM's responsibility to ensure all of those peoples are done and hold other people accountable for the completion of those different verticals. But it is absolutely critical that all of them are done, because they can be sales influencers, right? To me, I've seen it happen so often where a partner has a really strong marketing team and sales hasn't spoken to them. Whereas if you go and get them on board day one, let me introduce you into my partner marketing manager. They're really strong. They're going to help you. We're going to build a joint marketing plan. Bang. End user demand gen comes out of nowhere. And that is the critical steps to really driving this forward, really making things happen. And so salespeople and CAMs that love the whole value stack, they are going to build such a tighter relationship with the partner. And tight relationship, removing friction, that is what delivers consistent growth.
Yeah, and in terms of removing friction, what can you do as a vendor to really get it away from the partner? So would you say like most of the onboarding is really owned by the vendor side, and where you make sure that you really pull them through that process, or what have you seen as best practices there?
Yeah, so simplicity is king, right? So whoever owns it, because it depends on the partner, do they work with master agents? Do they work with distributors? Do they work directly with partners? Will all vary in the complexity and ownership, but making sure everyone is aware of whose responsibility is what is critical, especially as you walk down that stack. So let's take a pretty typical example: vendor, distributor, reseller. Well, the reseller is responsible for some things, the distributor is responsible for others, and the vendor is responsible for another set. And so making sure we all understand who the partner is, what the gates are, the timeframes and owners, having that managed and tracked, especially for your key partners, is critical. And communicating that plan ahead of time, right? So that's one of the things. People don't mind pushing water uphill if they know how much water and how far up, right? Then it's okay. But it's when it's, and one more thing. And one more thing. What's next? What's next? Suddenly that becomes such a painful process, right? And having that sort of clarity and honesty at the beginning of any recruitment and onboarding process, critical. It's going to take us 3 months to onboard. Here's the steps. Here's what we need from you. Here's what we're going to do. That's what closes very big deals. Partners are used to this because it's exactly the same process they go with big end users, right? When you're going to go and onboard an HSBC for whatever technology, well, they are doing that same process. So it's not new to them. It's just vendors are very consistently missing key elements to generate that success.
Yeah, I think you could really say here that if you know where the finish line is, you're a lot more motivated to actually reach it. And I think if you set that expectations very clearly and really line out what the core, so to say, is going to look like for the upcoming months, I think that's where you really remove the friction of the onboarding for your partners.
Yeah, and getting everyone bought into that plan. I always used to laugh. Someone worked at a previous company, and we sent a contract that was worth, upwards of $20 million. And it sat with the legal team for 3 weeks because no one had called the legal team to tell them that the contract was valued at over $20 million. The second they heard that, it was finished within 45 minutes. But someone had just sent an email saying, can you look at this? And it's like, well, no, we need to make sure all the stakeholders are bought into the importance, the value, and the time frame. Get those 3 things built, and then suddenly things start to move very, very quickly.
Yeah, I fully agree indeed. I think very clear communication is so important there. And that's also to create urgency within your own organization. Everybody has so many things on their plates. But the better you do that, the easier you will get the onboarding of your partners as well, I think. And especially, indeed, of course, it will always differ per partner, how important, how big they are, etc. So for the ones that are very crucial for your goals and that's going to become potentially a very fruitful partnership, make sure you get everyone on board within your own team and on the partner side as soon as possible.
Exactly. For me, I hate hearing the excuse, and we hear it sometimes internally, I hear it a lot externally, we don't have the time. That's never true. You don't have the priority. Now, that's a much different statement. Now, if we say, hey, if legal had been sitting on 4 $40 million contracts and they didn't prioritize the 20 million contract, yeah, that makes complete sense. But that's not the same as we didn't have time, right? We are prioritizing other things. And so whenever I hear I didn't have the time, no, you prioritized other things. Now, was that a correct decision or an incorrect decision? We'll have to hash that out. But so often it's, no, there were just other things in front of me and I didn't understand how important the thing you asked me was.
Nice. I think actually we dove in pretty well in the onboarding as well. So I think it's time to head up to the next one, to the training or the partner enablement piece. To be honest, I think that's very closely aligned to onboarding as well, because that's where you want to go, especially go very deep into training and enablement as well. But I think you touched upon several interesting topics. First was operations, of course, that's just something that has to be done. But we also have technical, marketing, and sales. And I actually think that partners need to be trained and enabled in all 3 of them. But what would you say the order would be, or what type of training should go to what type of personas within a partner?
Yeah, so I think, again, you want to fold this into a wider plan so people understand. Now, I often find the best place to start is marketing, because it sort of depends on how complex your product is, because if it's going to take 8 months for the technical team to get up and running, you probably want to start there before you start generating demand. But if your product is simpler and it's going to take 3-4 weeks to get your sales and technical team up and running, build a marketing strategy first, right? Because again, You can get your salespeople all excited. They understand all the value prop. No inbound opportunities, no opportunity generated. By the time they get an opportunity generated, they've forgotten everything you've trained them on anyway, right? So start with marketing, start generating demand, build a plan, a 12-week plan. How are you targeting end users? What your vertical is, what your messaging is, what your segment is. Build that and start taking that to market. Get marketing bought in early. And if you've got a capability to streamline and automate that process, brilliant, implement it. It's great. Now, from there, sales and technical done as parallel and typically not done by the same people, right? So that becomes much easier to coordinate in parallel. From a technical perspective, pre and post sales support, what's our strategy there? Who's the responsibility on for the support? But also, and one that's consistently missed, what product are the technical team involved with today in what end users? And can you generate a partnership there? Right, that's so important because I've often found the easiest way into an end user is not via, a CEO or whoever, it's via their technical team. If they think you can make their life easier, they will implement it, right? 9 times out of 10, budget can be found. And so the technical team, pre-sales into pre-sales or post-sales into post-sales, they've built such a good relationship over a long period of time. Some of these relationships are 20, 25 years old. And if they say, yeah, we've got this great product, I think it will work in your ecosystem because we speak about your ecosystem a lot. That's free sales, right? That's free sales. You've expanded your sales team. So that is one key critical element to technical training, which is not just what support do you need to deliver and here's how we can help you, but what's the value of the product? Here's the types of end users that we work with. Here's the ecosystems we integrate with. And here's why we can make your life easier. Everyone's in it for them, right? And to me, that's not a bad point. It's an important sales message. Sometimes it's not about saving money. Sometimes it's about just making my life easier, right? I always laugh at Apple and Android, right? Because Android, much more feature rich, right? There's a lot more complexity. But I liken Apple to a butler. It just does it. It just makes my life easier. I don't have to think about it. I turn on an iPhone. I don't change any settings. It just is. That's all I care about. It just works. And that's the value that Apple has generated with their brand awareness. That's what technical is often doing for you. They're selling, but they're not even realizing they're selling. They're just simplifying your life. They're removing friction at an end user level. So turn that on and you've extended your sales team. And you've extended your sales team in a very trusted mechanism, right? Your partner and your end user, they're typically trusted advisors towards each other. They're bouncing ideas backwards and forwards. Integrate your sales messaging into there and you're going to do very well.
Yeah, especially the trusted advisor piece, indeed, that's so true. Like, because of course, there's always like, even on the end user side, that's the people they talk to the most, like they're the technical people, and they really became their trusted advisor for them. What I think, what was really interesting, indeed, what you said is indeed start with marketing in terms of removing the friction. We've been having this conversation so often with many vendors, with many channel teams where they're like, yeah, it's so hard for me to get engagement on my training, on my enablement. I have all this technical training they need to follow. They need certification. I want to do sales enablement so they know how to talk about their products. But it's always a bit like, what's the incentive for the partner to follow that training? And that's the thing you can completely turn around if you put marketing in front of it. Like, you really start with what's our joint value proposition. So how are we going to message to the market together, vendor plus partner? And from there on, you start building the plan. And indeed, if you start building the plan on terms of marketing, you are not pushing something through the partner and try to have them do something, but you are together going to create a pull effect. So end users will come to the partner because you will do end user demand generation, and they will start asking questions about that joint value proposition you are positioning in the market. And if you do that first, then the incentive to start actually learning for the salespeople, for example, or the technical people, to start learning a lot more about the products, about how to sell it, etc., is so much bigger because they will get questions from end users and they know it and they want to be prepared for when they are talking to the end user. And I think that's a thing that you can really turn around in terms of removing the friction. Like, if you put marketing first, well, oftentimes I see it coming last. So we first want partners to have all the training and certification before we start generating demand together. I think that could be a crucial process switch for a lot of vendors to remove the friction there.
For sure. I've seen technical teams complain that salespeople have sold technology before they've been trained. But I've never once heard a technical team say, oh yeah, this end user asked us for this technology and we're not ready yet. Well, that's fine. Then let's get ready. But there's a massive difference between generating inbound demand from, I'm going to keep picking them as a good example, right? But an HSBC. Oh, HSBC have called us because they saw a LinkedIn post that we did about this particular technology stack. We're not ready to sell that. Well, we haven't sold it, but now we can go on that journey together. Oh, okay. Well, that's what moves it. And it's really bad when a salesperson goes, I've got the PO. Now you've got to deliver this. Well, I've never even heard of it. I've never been trained on it. That's a problem. But why starting with marketing for me is so critical is it smooths everything out, right? Because it generates demand, gets salespeople interested, gets technical people interested, guarantees marketing ROI, because usually there's a longer lead time to generate marketing interest. So starting there, critical. And I would ask and advise that vendors look at how simple is our marketing process? How well defined is our marketing process from to partner marketing to through partner marketing? Not the same thing. How do we do that? What are our messaging points? Do we have a B2C model? Do we have a B2B model? Is that B2B model end user gen, partner gen? And really defining the key value stack there. And then look at removing friction. There are tools everywhere to help simplify the to partner marketing story. The through partner marketing story, I think, is very poorly done typically. And what we're trying to do here, right, is we're trying to educate the channel and the partnerships organization in total. Here's how you can make that process easily, because generating demand is the shortcut to everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think indeed from that perspective, from removing the friction, things that I really learned is you need to make that as easy as possible for the partners, and you can go in many directions there. But there's like some basic things you need to do that it's like co-branded with the partner. That's the thing they find really important, that it's in their languages or that it's in their lingo, so to say, of the end users they are focusing on. And I think one thing that you can necessarily fix completely with tech, for example, but is extremely important, especially here in EMEA, is provided in the language of your partner. Like, I know it's a little bit of extra work, and I know that a lot of vendors are hesitant to do it and provide everything in English, but I have hardly ever seen a partner that's not getting paid by a vendor for their MDF that is going to translate the content themselves and then use it. So in terms of indeed that marketing and removing the friction there, I think that's one of the things I always really try to tell the vendors we're speaking to, like, invest that little bit of extra money in translating it into the core markets that you are focusing on, because you will see such a high impact there on the adoption within your partners and engagement.
100%, right? We live in the Netherlands, right? Everyone here speaks fantastic English. I'm always obscenely impressed how good everyone's English is here. But we track the click-through data. We know that the marketing that we do for the Netherlands in English versus in Dutch, it's better in Dutch, right? The click-through data is there. And we're probably in one of the countries in the world that isn't natively English speaking that speaks the best English. So imagine when you go into a country that doesn't have quite the same level of English speaking, and yet you're assuming that people are going to click your data over, a competitive vendor that's doing it in French or Spanish or Italian or whatever language you want to pick, right? They're just not, right? You, again, remove friction, really analyze and re-optimize consistently. It's not to say you have to make 50 changes this quarter, but pick the most 3 that are going to have the most impact, make those changes, keep going. And over time, you're going to build a process. And again, I look at Microsoft always as one of the best versions of this. You're going to build a business and a channel design that is optimized and as close to frictionless as it's possible to be. And suddenly you can manage 400,000 plus global partners, which, I think that's ultimately everyone's ambitious, right? You want to grow your business as big as possible. Well, you do that by simplifying it for everyone, for end users, for partners, for distribution, master agents, whoever that is, and for yourself, right? And having a very well-defined strategy is critical to making that happen.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think that's throughout the entire partner journey, indeed, that you need to do it in every single step. I think maybe to finalize the marketing part as well a little bit, I think indeed crucial to start with the joint value proposition. That's the first thing, so everybody understands that, both within the partner organization, your own organization, and of course, most importantly, the end user eventually. Secondly, indeed, there are a lot of tools you can look at to actually help your partners with it. They always lack time and resources on the marketing side. oftentimes they only have 0 to 1 FTE. So that's really a thing you have to look at, like how can you support them with that and automate a lot of that process while still keeping your partner in charge of their own marketing channels, because that's like a requirement for it. And last but not least, indeed, really focus on bringing it in their own language. I think if you work on those 3 things, those are like some crucial things you can work on to remove the friction out of partner marketing and true partner marketing in that case. And that brings us to the last topic of today, at least, of the partner journey. Of course, there are many more pieces of the journey to talk about, but the sales part, and that's where you have a lot more experience than me as well. I think very interesting to dive a little bit deeper. Like, what have you seen there? Like the things that can help to remove the friction.
Sales, my favorite bit. Yeah, absolutely. So I think you want to break down your strategy into a couple of elements, right? So 1, educating the partners on who you sell to, not who you could sell to, who you actually sell to. And it's something I see mistakes made consistently, which is, oh yeah, we work in like loads of different environments. No, who do you actually sell to? Because let's guarantee success as close as we can for the short term. Where you're growing and where your tech roadmap is and who you could be selling to in the future is not the journey today. Like, let's plan for 6 months. Who are we going to be successful with now? Start there. Types of end users. Then build a 2-part strategy. And this is something that's missed so consistently. So channel leaders, CAMs, when you're working with partners, make sure you build a sales strategy in 2 formats. Your existing end users and your new end users. And do not just prioritize existing end users. So often partners will sit there and tell me, yep, we've signed a vendor and they just want to target our 15 biggest current end users. And FYI, they're ripping and replacing current technology that we may have sold within the last 2 years. Guess what we're not going to do? Any of it. We are not going to rip and replace technology because a new vendor has said it's a great idea. Our most important assets are our renewable customers. They will protect that relationship consistently. So can you be additive to that? Great. Then build an additive sales strategy. How do you supplement that technology stack? How do you fit into it? And let's define who those end users are. Let's go to market together and really target that as a partnership. And then build a net new end user strategy. How are you going to target competitive vendors, competitive technology? How are you going to market and sales attack net new end users? What's the ICP? What's your ideal customer profile? What do they look like? How are we going to take that message to market? Build those 2 strategies in parallel and then keep asking the same question. How do we make this easier? Right? So often I see vendors, distributors, partner organizations fail to have this conversation, which is, how easy are we to do business with today in comparison to other vendors in our tech stack? Because so often they go, yeah, I love doing business with you. You take me out for beers once a week. Brilliant. Why are you selling my competitive vendor then? Better price, easier to purchase. We get loads of end user demand gen from them. So yeah, as much as I really like you as a person, I'm going to sell the stuff that makes me the most money or that's easiest to sell. And so making sure you build those parallel sales strategies and continue with the process of optimize and re-optimize on a quarterly basis, that's what's going to lead you to be successful.
Yeah, that's crucial. And I think indeed, looking from that perspective, on the one hand, it's the existing partner base. So that usually starts probably with account mapping, look at what type of customers are we both working with and how are we going to tie that together. I think that's pretty clear to me and hopefully also to the audience. But I think what's interesting is also the new business. So how would you approach that as well with a partner? So indeed, there are customers that you both don't have yet. There's an important part for marketing there, of course, because first is joint value proposition and to who are we going to target that? And how do you then support that from a sales perspective as well to make it like a whole approach to that new customer base?
Yeah, okay. So then to wrap up, let's discuss how you target end users that are new to the partner and to the vendor. And I think it's a great topic. So there's sort of 3 key strategies in my mind that you target that effectively. First, partnerships. Do we work with, let's pick 2 vendors that we know relatively well, Zoom, Salesforce. Okay, fantastic. Well, Zoom has a Salesforce integration. So let's go and speak to Salesforce and find out who their end users are and work together through that partnership. The best version of this is if the partner sells both technology stacks, because then while they might be new for that partner and that end user, they've got a mechanism in. They can come in talking very effectively. For the partner, it's great. They may be able to steal some existing business from a different partner, but they're able to bring a cohesive solution, which is a new messaging. Secondly, target competitive vendors. If you know that this end user that you've been targeting for a while is selling a competitive vendor, let's go in there together with the vendor, tough commercials, tough messaging, and see if we can do an attack campaign. So you've got to play with strategy, you've got to play against strategy, and then you've touched on the third, marketing, right? Let's take a very, very specific message, target a very, very focused ICP, and do that via social, via targeted campaigns, and really build the messaging in those three veins. But if you do that effectively, that's how you're going to attack new end users with new partners. And to me, when you really take that proactive messaging to partners, that tells them you're serious, not just about growing your book, but growing their book. And that's what they care about.
Yeah, and then I think that's indeed very interesting, because then you really get the best of both worlds with we talked about push and pull, of course, but you don't just want to pull, you also want to push. Like, that's why you work with partners as well. Like, you do pull with the marketing and you push together with sales, and then you really get the most traction on the sales side as well. And I think that's what partners love as well in terms of removing the friction. Like, if you can show them that together, like, you're stronger, you're better together, and together you can actually find new customers as well. That's what partners all really love, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, partnerships are critical because we're both in it to win it. That's why I love partnerships, because you can talk about business in true business terms. We both care about maximizing our money. And so let's build a plan for that. That's net new customer acquisition, and that's existing partner acquisition. How do we do that? How do we grow together? Ultimately build the plan to win.
Yeah, I love it, man. I think this was an excellent episode again, where we really dove into the full partner journey and removing the friction. And I think, to summarize, indeed, that's what you should really focus on as a channel person or as a partner person every single day, every single week, together with your team. How we can remove the friction, and then mostly in the 5 key areas. So how can we remove the friction in partner recruitment? How can we remove it in onboarding, in training and enablement, in marketing, and in sales? And if you keep focusing on that and improve that day by day, then you will win 100% in channel and in partnerships.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, Alex.